This conference will now be recorded.
There we go. Start the recording. So, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our August virtual lunch meeting with the Titusville Area Chamber of Commerce. We're thrilled to have everybody here, and I'm super excited that I've got to, in 24 hours, got to spend 2 opportunities with our congressman, and so appreciative that he was able to join us. Sorry that it's virtual again this month, but grateful to see you last night, and we look forward to having you in person, eyeball to eyeball again very, very soon. So our luncheon series, as many of you know, is sponsored, the entire series is sponsored by AT&T. And so I have to give a big shout out to Dan Pollock and the entire team at AT&T for their support of not only the chamber, but the community in general. And Dan wasn't able to be with us today, but I always like to give them a quick shout out. Just quick housekeeping rules to remind everybody. I will keep everybody muted except for the congressman and myself, and ask that please don't play with me with mute, unmute, unmute, and mute, because I'll keep punching the button. And it's really for the sake of giving people the best audio quality as possible. So you may have heard the congressman and I talking. Sometimes when you get really bad audio on these things, it makes it really hard to hear and participate and make sense of what's happening. So I try really hard to manage the audio so that everybody has a chance to hear. If you have a question, of course, there is a chat feature. So we respectfully ask you to put the questions or comments in the chat feature. And we've got team members who will be monitoring that, and we'll bring those forward as the meeting goes on. And then, of course, you heard it, but the meeting has been recorded so that we can turn around and offer the content. We've been posting these on our YouTube channel. So look for the recording to be available at a later date for that, and for people who may not have been able to join us today. Again, big shout out to AT&T, and thank them for their continued support of the community. And with that, I am going to turn it over to my favorite congressman. Last night, joking with Patrick, he said that the Titusville Chamber was their favorite North Brevard Chamber of Commerce. And so I'll say this is my favorite congressman from the 8th District, right? Can I say that? Bill, I do want to just say I am so appreciative of how accessible you are, what a great staff team you have, and all of your care and concern that you take, and how seriously you take your responsibility representing us in Washington, D.C. And I'm just so appreciative that you're here with us today. So take it away.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Marcia. And I'm glad to be here today, even if it has to be virtual. Really enjoyed the face-to-face meet the candidates event that the chamber had last night. I got to see you. I got my heart broken there. I don't go too far looking ahead on my schedule. You get depressed. I usually keep my schedule one day ahead. And talking to Al Taylor about Dixie Crossroads, and he goes, "Sorry, Bill, but it's virtual tomorrow." No, tell me you're joking now. Laura Lee was in my meeting yesterday. She's on one of my councils, and I found it odd she didn't say see you tomorrow. It was over. She didn't say anything, and now I understand why. Of course, Al tipped me off to it, but really do appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, even though it was not face to face. I'm going to miss Walter Colley's photographs this year. Usually, the best photo I have taken of myself all year long, and often I use in my brochures, is the ones that Walter takes when I'm up there giving my speeches, and we're loving on each other and stuff, and it really came out in good expressions. Walter, I'm so sad you're not going to get some pictures from me. That's kind of selfish of me, but that's the truth. What a difference 1 year makes. I mean, 1 year ago when I talked to you, and that was my 11th time, and man, the world was so rosy. I mean, everything was so great. The economy was booming. We had more job openings and we had people looking for work. So, the economic value of every single person in the workforce was rising, was being, supply and demand. You know how it works. lowest unemployment rate in 30 years, the lowest minority unemployment rate since they began measuring it ever. I mean, it was just a question of how great can things get? I mean, it was just so wonderful. You know, we were on a track to be so super. And then along comes the COVID-19. And, you know, these have been obviously challenging times for all of us due to that nasty virus. And, but, you know, we've all been working to do what we can to get our economy back on track and get our country back on track and awaken us from this like self-induced coma that we're all in. And let's crawl out from underneath the couch or whatever and get back into life as soon as we can. You know, we need to, I think, recognize and thank all our first responders and essential businesses and their employees who despite the high risk at the time, you know, continued working so we could have the necessary services available that we needed to sustain life while we're even in this self-induced coma. You know, millions of people have lost their lives, or lost their jobs, excuse me. Well, a lot have lost their lives, but, you know, millions have lost their jobs due to no fault of their own. And it's been, you know, a heck of a hit. And so that's why I was happy to participate in passing the CARES Act, which I assume everybody is fairly familiar with, as we attempted to keep people on the payroll and not in the unemployment lines due to circumstances that were totally beyond their control. The CARES Act also included my provision to keep the NASA and defense contractors on the payroll. Just tell you a little bit about that. You know, Jim Bridenstine, when he was in Congress, is in a little bit of an election problem, and asked if a couple of us would come out there and talk about him, how good he is and stuff. I mean, he's, you know, top gun and just a great guy. And so I dropped everything in my campaign. I ran out there and campaigned for him a couple of days, and he really ended up stomping the opponent. But he was really grateful, and I never had any idea that, you know, someday he'd be the NASA administrator. And it's good to have built that relationship when I had the opportunity. So when I'm reading the CARES Act, and I got a copy of it around here, it's about that thick, and it's all yellow tabbed and junked around, but I noticed it had a cutout when, you know, it said NASA employees are all going to get paid. And a few of the contractor people that are deemed absolutely positively life essential, they're going to get paid. But thousands of other guys and women are not going to get paid, whether or not they can work online and telecommute. So, so I still got his cell number, so I call him up, you know, and I say, hey, Mr. Administrator, we got a problem. Houston, we got a problem. And he said, well, what is it? I said, you're paying all the NASA people, the NASA employees, but, you know, a lot of other people that do the work out there are going to be hitting the road. And if it's like anything like we have every other time, we've had major layoffs like this, especially this. We have no idea how long this is going to last. They look for other jobs, other locations, you know, and nobody knows more about that than the people in Titusville. I mean, every time there's a burp out there, Titusville takes a hit because of your close proximity and reliance. So he said, well, Bill, I can't pay people for not showing up for work. I mean, that would be illegal. I said, Jim, you can pay them for not coming on the job site if you're the one stopping them from coming on the job site. These people are ready, willing, and able to go to work and wear a mask or do whatever, but you have it closed down. And their money is already in the budget. They're already getting paid. You know, we need to keep this team together, you know, and he was very sympathetic to it. So we talked through lawyers for about 3 days, and we got language inserted into the act before it passed that covered that. And of course, I was thinking about my local people, but right after we passed it, the phone lines started lighting up. And of course, you know, we're hearing from every other NASA installation in the country that they're glad that they got to keep their contractors around. And then we started hearing the second wave from the defense people, you know, from NO2 at the port, and, you know, the Army and the Marines, the Air Force. They all have contractors that do their services that weren't considered, you know, basically life essential, but necessary for the continued operation. So that, anyways, thousands of people, a lot of it unintended, even by me, were saved by that one provision that we put in there. We've also worked hard. You know, tourism is such a big part of our economy and becoming greater and greater part of your economy. And I moved to fixed per diem levels at the pre-pandemic rate because travel got hit so bad, all the hoteliers, all the tourist people got hit so bad. And I think we're actually going to be able to pull that off, and that will really help. We all know that Trump announced 4 essentially executive orders is what they were. And the only difference in what they termed them and is how they're published. And he tried to help American families and businesses that are still struggling, targeting student loans, eviction, and unemployment benefits. And he wants to continue the unemployment. It was $600 no matter how much you made on top of your state employment. He wants to extend it at $400 a week, with the federal government kicking in $300 and the state government kicking in $100 to complete that. And so that's where that is. And I think he did that. They kind of forced the House and the Senate to come to terms. The Senate wants to just extend unemployment. And the House has a version that's $2 trillion more stuff unrelated to that. And I mean, I don't want to cast aspersions, but I kind of look at the House's position as looters in time of disaster. I mean, when you have a disaster, your first and foremost responsibility, if it's a fire, put out the fire. We'll worry about all this other stuff, social ills or agenda later, but let's address the fire. And people being without jobs, job losses that they didn't cause, that's a fire to me. And that should be first and foremost. And that should have been done before we left town last week. And I'm angry that it's not done, but right now it's between McConnell, Pelosi, and Trump to see where we're going to go with that. It also talked about preventing eviction. If you're in a domicile that is insured, has an insured federal mortgage, and almost every mortgage in one way or another is insured by some federal backup, you can't evict anybody during this period. The president also issued an order to suspend the employee portion of the payroll tax and just let people take home more now. He didn't say eliminate it. It's possible that it may need to be made up later. I don't know how he would plan to do that, but if you pay an extra 1% for 10 years when we get through out of this, when we work our way through this thing, that's probably how I'm guessing. But we don't know how long it's going to last, so it's kind of hard to say this is how the end game is going to look, when we're just in the middle of it right now, and nobody knows for sure what that end is going to look like. Every one of us, are wondering what's the new normal going to be, and when is it going to be? We can cope with anything that we know about. If we know what's going on, we see we can cope with it. We're very resilient people, but that unknown right now is kind of stopping people from addressing it in the best way. So the Paycheck Protection Program was a big hit. Everybody that applied that was qualified that I know of, every business ended up being funded if they were qualified. At first, they were slow getting it done, and people were all thinking, man, I'm getting shafted on this. But before it was all over, the system was so overwhelmed, like the state's unemployment system. Suddenly they got millions of people where they used to have hundreds of people, and it crashed the system every time they try and put it back up again. And I expect Congress will be coming out with another kind of stimulus. How much? I really don't know at this point because it's up in the air between all the sides. It's what we call a moving target. But I think one way or the other, unemployment benefits will be extended, and there'll be another little stimulus check coming. The Main Street lending program, that the people that were not eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program, I think it still has $39 billion unused in it. I think that's the amount of $39 billion. So a lot of the companies that were too big for PPP, still there's a lot of money there without even that pot being replenished still to take advantage of there to stay in business. This last Friday, we got great economic news, much better than anybody expected. But 1.8 million jobs were added, and so that brings the unemployment rate down to, as of Friday, 10.2%. Everybody thought it would still be about double that. That's really encouraging. That's what it was at about the beginning of Trump's inauguration, actually. One of the things that he did when we passed the tax package, he's real big on opportunity zones. And these are areas that socioeconomically are in need, where there's not money going into it as it would be other sectors of the economy. So we established these opportunity zones, and of course there's one in Titusville, Port St. John, Cocoa, Melbourne, and Western Indian River County. And these encourage private investment in areas that they normally wouldn't because of the tax advantage they get. I've also introduced the RAM Act, and the RAM Act is Reshoring American Manufacturing, and it provides tax credits to companies who bring business back into the United States from overseas, most particularly China. So over the last 3 years, we have added 500,000 manufacturing jobs, new manufacturing jobs in this country. The RAM Act will build on that by further breaking our dependence on China and helping rebuild our industries here at home and making them less important in our supply chain, which is critical. And while we're talking about China, earlier this year, I filed a bill to target Chinese pharmaceuticals and for all of them that are made overseas. We know we've received plenty of contaminated ones, and we know we've relied too much on them for sources, and to the degree that some of them right now we cannot manufacture in our country unless we reorganize. And I think that we need to do that. It's unacceptable to be so dependent on China for our life-saving medications. And the CARES Act included some of my language that I got in there to study our dependence on the communists in China for our pharmaceuticals. It's not my first rodeo with China, by the way. It's just now making the news. But I first filed my first piece of China-specific defense or offense, however you want to call it, legislation 5 years ago, when I heard that a NASA employee had given secrets. I think he sold them to the Chinese Communist Party, and then he defected. And so I filed an amendment to the NASA reauthorization bill 5 years ago, requiring NASA to beef up all their security protocols and anti-espionage provisions to make sure that doesn't happen again. And we need to do that in every federal agency. As you guys know, the Chinese communists are shameless thieves. They're shameless liars. Their long-term goal is economy first, but in China, everything's military. You can't get away from the Chinese military influence there, and they think that economic dominance of the world will lead to militaristic dominance of the world. They're taught that they're superior to us, and at the end of the day, they need to rule the world, and we need to be subjected to them. Locally, we've seen very good growth at the Kennedy Space Center, and the landmark legislation that we passed has been really good. One of the things I passed, and I might have talked about this last time, was the first ever space law that encourages companies to exploit resources on asteroids, like some companies have been started to do. They identified one asteroid as having more platinum-based materials on it than we have mined on Earth since the beginning of time. And you mine them there. There's no ecological damage to the planet when you do that. And so companies have literally been starting to go do that, but they want to make sure that when they brought this stuff home, if they meet all the safety protocols and all that, then the government is going to come in and tax them. And if the government's going to claim the ownership of some of this stuff, they're going to go launch from other countries. So my space law said, no, if you launch from here, if you bring back this stuff, the government's not going to claim it belongs to them. So please launch from here, and don't go launch from French Guiana, and don't go launch from Russia. We want you to do that here. And I did a streamline amendment that cut red tape for commercial launch vehicles, and we're starting to see now the benefit of that. As more and more of these companies are coming online. Frank DeBella was at our Space Council yesterday, and he said normally they have 25 or so companies that they're dealing with in the hopper. They bring down in a funnel shape till they come out the bottom. He said they have 80 right now. Never came near that amount ever before. They thought 50 would be awesome, but it's over 80 new companies they're working with to bring in here right now that are space related. That's Space Florida, and The Starfighters, you know, we passed finally a licensing process for them. I think I told you about them before. That's the F-104 jets that have flown a zillion miles and pilots with a zillion missions. And they've done the parabolic testing for NASA where they could put the experiment in the back seat of the airplane and save the cost of an expendable rocket launch to check gravity on an experiment. But they wouldn't let them carry a paying passenger. They said they weren't an airline and they weren't totally untried like they licensed Virgin Galactic to do out in Nevada. So they wouldn't give them a license. So we finally put in place a way for them to get a license to create more jobs for them. We fought record funding for commercial crew and the ground systems at Kennedy Space Center have passed. And so I to sum it all up, I think that it's safe to say that our space program is headed in the right direction, despite COVID-19, looking real good. And when I get close, just give me a sign. And I had a timer here, and it went away. So I don't know where I am right now.
You're good. You're good. You're fine. Keep going. You got more to talk about, I know.
Yeah, y'all witnessed SpaceX's Dragon crew mission, complete and successful, historic. And their tentative they set for operational mission on the 26th. And Boeing Starliners tentatively plan to launch a second demo of the uncrewed mission later in December. So, I mean, it's just coming up all spades. It's beautiful. To keep the momentum going, I introduced a bipartisan American Space Commerce Act to protect the domestic space industry. One of the biggest problems we have with other countries, and that's how we lost so much of our launch potential, is, we tax our guys and we regulate the heck out of them like other countries don't. Other countries subsidize their companies to get the launches. And so, if you're a foreign national or anyone else, if your heart's not in America, it's certainly, and if you're worried about your stockholder being too critical of you, it's more profitable to launch in some other countries. And I thought we need to have some incentives here to retain the people that we have and to lure back some of the business that we've lost. And so this one the bill that I filed and I expect will get passed, will provide tax incentives for companies that launch American rockets from American soil. You got to do both. It's got to be an American rocket, got to be American soil to qualify for the tax incentive. And that'll level the playing field against Russia, China, French, who heavily subsidize their programs and have taken so much away from us. Space Command, Space Force. Glad that we really finally officially have a Space Force. We really need it. There's a lot of people that want to bicker and argue about it, but it was like being single at a couples party in Space Force. Air Force had theirs, Army had theirs, but they didn't talk to each other. And besides external threats that we have, the natural threats that we have were critical. We talked before, 2 years ago, we missed a big plasma burst by the sun. Boom, 1 week in our orbit, or it would have put us back in the dark ages. It would have, knocked out every single satellite we had. No communications, no checking, no telephones. We had a hearing on it, and all they could say, catastrophic. They could not put a number on it. They just said it would have been catastrophic. We talked about the book 1 second after. I urged everybody to read, and it gives a whole more scary details of what would happen. We know from experience that the asteroid implosion, 1,000 miles, many people that injured over 1,000 people. There are external threats, and we've just not identified all of them that we had hoped we would identify, such a small percentage of them. So the Space Force will also be doing that. They wrote a directive yesterday, which gives their mission, because I had meetings from 9 o'clock yesterday morning till the end of your event at 8 o'clock last night. I have not read the directive yet, and I'm anxious to do that. But I got a good idea what it says. And we are one of several states under consideration. It broke a year ago. Florida's out of the running. It's going to Colorado Springs. That's it. Everybody else shut down their operation. And a few of us dug in and said, wait a minute, how are you going to do this? How was that process done? So we got them to look at it again. And now we're in the running again. It ought to be us, obviously. Everybody thinks that it ought to be them. But, for the reasons that they chose Cape Kennedy initially, for the safety and the weather and the potential about the equatorial orbits, everything, plus a zillion new factors like a qualified workforce, education, quality of life, no state income taxes, zillions of reasons that it needs to be here. And we're up here swinging to get it done. But it's so much politics involved. And y'all have heard sometimes about, well, this senator will hold this bill up until he gets his trade for it. Unfortunately, that's a fact, and that's what we're fighting against. But at the end of the day, if justice prevails, we'll have it in Brevard somewhere. That they already own a square mile. You know what a square mile is. One section in Palm Bay, 640 acres, owned by the government. Got an old runway on it already. That's one of the criteria that said you got to have room for a runway. Got an old radar thing on it. Very secure. All utilities available. Even if it's not at the Space Center, even if it's not on Patrick Airport Base, right there they can do the entire complex that they want, totally secure. Before we run out of time, I want to talk a little bit about Lagoon. I talked to y'all about before that I founded this Lagoon Caucus up there, or Estuary Caucus actually is what we called it. There's 28 estuaries, like our estuary, our Indian River Lagoon, it's an estuary, and there's 28 of them in the country, and they're all in trouble. And so, I'm up there swimming against the tide all the time. 434 other people that don't give a flying hoot about my estuary, my Indian River Lagoon down here. And I thought, we need to get all the people together that have these estuaries in their district and have strength in numbers here. So that's when I started the Estuary Caucus. I reached across the aisle. I got a Democrat, Suzanne Bonamici, who's a polar opposite from me in every single way you can go in this world, except we have a mutual interest in our estuaries. So we formed this bipartisan Estuary Caucus, and I buy donuts and coffee, and I give away a space pen. Y'all know what the space pens are. You've seen those. They write upside down. Russians don't have space pens. They just use a pencil, but we have space pens. And everybody puts a card in a bowl, and they show up, and I give away a space pen. And we get like 80 to 100 members of staff. Usually the 36 members that we usually have meetings or something, but the staff comes, and that's really important because Congress is so staff driven, and the other 410 members who don't have estuaries in their district or don't have any interest in an estuary will rely on their staff for telling them how to vote on issues that relate to estuaries. And so if we can get their staffs in there and train them, and with the importance of estuaries and how to fix the problems with it, then it's a home run. So that helps explain why we've been able to do so good on some of the other legislation that we've passed to get research funded to study how we're going to eliminate this stuff, how we're going to fix it, besides taking bad junk out of it and stop putting bad junk in it, the process of actually cleaning it up and the funding for it. The Office of Management and Budget zeroed out the National Estuary Program, zeroed it out, totally took it off the books. And we got it back in the budget, and actually with an increase. And so we're at $675,000 base funding for our estuary from Washington, D.C. per year. And then there's additional grant programs that they can qualify for. And while we're talking about that, I want y'all know Dwayne DeFreeze. He's head of our National Estuary Program, just one of the most wonderful guys in the world. He fought cancer and survived it. He got cancer again. And Thursday, he went in the hospital.
Did it freeze?
I hear you. I don't know.
Did we lost the congressman? Is it frozen for anybody else? Bill?
It's frozen.
Okay.
Right in the middle of a good story we wanted to hear.
I know. Bill, for some reason you are frozen. Just FYI. It's a good picture. You have a good expression on your face, but we can't hear what you're saying, and the video has stopped on your end. See what happens. Let me see if Patrick is. See if Patrick is still there with him. Oh, okay, he went off. Let's see if he comes back. I love to watch people that talk with their hands on these video calls. I mean, he's swimming and the funnel. I'm guilty of talking with my hands, and so it's been an interesting experience. Let's see if we can get him back. Give him a couple of seconds and see if he comes back on. And I am going to quickly just skip really fast and keep the conversation flowing here. And I'll remind everybody that we are starting a farmers market in North Brevard this Friday, actually, in the downtown Welcome Center parking lot. So 419 South Hopkins, the Julia Street parking lot. And from 3 to 6 on Fridays, our plan is to work with Brevard County and have a farmers market there. I think they have 10 or 11 vendors already happening for this Friday. We pulled it together in a week's time, so a little crazy timeline, but we're excited about it. And this is a partnership with the University of Florida Agriculture Extension Office, and so they're very focused on locally grown and produced product at this market. And so there's also benefits from the CARES Act that the Congressman was mentioning earlier for food stabilization. And so you can receive, based on if you've been financially impacted from the pandemic, then there is an opportunity for you to receive assistance at the market that allows you to shop at the market for fresh food and receive a portion of the CARES Act dollars in order to do that. And they also double, if you know anyone, a household that participates in the SNAP program, they there you are, Bill. I've been tap dancing. Your microphone is still muted, but you're back.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have no idea what happened. Just the beauties of technology.
That's right. All right. So I was tap dancing while you were getting back with us. So I will hold my comments and let you finish up talking about the lagoon. So you were in the middle of saying that Dwayne went into the hospital on Thursday, I think is what you were saying.
Oh yes, you know, he had cancer. I explained that, and then reoccurred, and COVID-19. So if you keep him in your thoughts and prayers, it'd be great. He's such a wonderful asset to this community, and he's been our lead guy on the estuary since day one. And and speaking of that, we also work to protect the Prescott Mammal Rescue Grant, which was a vital partnership in preserving and protecting our wildlife. You read about them a lot. Well, they got zeroed out too. We were able to get them back in. Holding Washington accountable. You know that I previously filed bills to clean up Congress that included to extend a lobbying ban by former members of Congress from 1 year to 5 years. Haven't been able to get that passed yet. Reintroduced it. Also introduced one to stop former members of Congress who lobby on behalf of foreign governments from getting their retirement benefits. I mean, when you go to the other side and you're going to lobby for another government, I think you're ended up working against the United States of America. I haven't seen one issue yet where lobbyists representing another country were pushing anything that was in the best interest for our country. And so I think if you're going to do that, you go ahead and do that. We don't want to restrict us doing that, but we're going to stop paying you your retirement when you change sides on us. I previously introduced legislation to require all members of Congress, and this is before this latest blow up in the presidential races, to disclose overseas business investments of themselves or any member of their family. My 72-hour provision, which requires legislation to be available for 72 hours to the public and the members of Congress before it can be voted on. Believe it or not, they are still abiding by that. It's in the rule book and they haven't violated it. Every now and then we've done a vote to overstep it with unanimous consent. If everybody in the whole chamber agrees, then they can do it in less than 72 hours. And there's a couple times we've done that. We all agree, no need to wait on this. It's not that long to read or that hard to read. I think I talked to you before about passing what they call a Posey rule in the House. requiring comparative print so you can actually tell what Congress is doing. And, you know, one senator, I was trying to lobby him on taking up in the Senate. He said, well, why would we want to do that? I mean, he was serious. Why would we want to let the public know what we were doing? Well, because they trust us to do that. That's the answer. You know, so it's vital that we keep the interest in Washington on serving our constituents, you know, and not self-interest. So, you know, we're a strong people. We're a great nation. We've faced a whole lot together. We've overcome a whole lot together. Many great challenges have been overcome, and each time we overcome the challenge, we come back even stronger than we started out. And that's going to be the same way with this COVID. This time is no different. So thank you for the privilege of representing you, and God bless you and God bless America. So.
Thanks, Bill. I do have a couple of follow-ups, just if you don't mind. First of all, I want to tell you that the Florida Chamber's economist, Dr. Jerry Parrish, was reporting at the beginning of the pandemic on sort of the state of the economy and talking a little bit about things. And one of the things that he recognized is that Brevard has diversified their economy to become the second most diversified economy in the state of Florida. And so he felt like we have just done a remarkable job overcoming some of that space focus, and not that we shouldn't be focusing on space, but diversifying the base, and that was going to help us recover from anything, but in particular this pandemic, faster than some of our other counterpart areas in the state and in the country. So that's very encouraging, and I thank you for your leadership on recognizing things like manufacturing, et cetera, are vital to strengthening our foundation of our economy, particularly here in Brevard. The other thing I'll mention is we were out on the lagoon this weekend actually doing a photo shoot, and we just saw a ton of fish and dolphin, and the water was beautiful. So I am very encouraged that we're seeing, and the bioluminescence, I understand, is spectacular this year. I'm hoping this weekend maybe to get out there and check it out, but I'm hearing good reports from folks that the lagoon is looking healthier. And so I do want to shout out and thank you for that focus, because it is hard to fight when you know, when you're a small program and not a lot of impact on the budget in the you know, end result. You still seem to come under fire and lose, you know, take aim at your money, even if it wouldn't be a drop in the bucket to fix the problems with the federal budget. It still comes under fire. So I appreciate you protecting the National Estuary Program big time. I think that the couple of questions that we had, there was a question about the Space Command and the headquarters. I think you addressed that as far as Brevard being in the fight. I know of like 2 locations. I think they're looking at KSC, they're looking at Palm Bay. Any other comment on what you think the chances are there?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a food fight. And fortunately, like I said, at first, they basically narrowed it down to Colorado Springs. And my argument was, if you leave it in Colorado Springs, you might as well not have a Space Force. You'd just be part of the Air Force. We're right back to circle one again. Everybody trying to keep and control their part of the missile empire, you know, and not have one good, cohesive, unified program for defense of space, which is the ultimate military high ground, as everyone knows. I mean, in World War II, you can go online and you can see concepts that Hitler had of a space station that would rain terror down on the ground, and you wouldn't even see them. I mean, it's like the Golan Heights over to Israel. You know, you wonder, well, why won't Israel give back that big old ugly piece of rock? Nothing's going to grow on it. There's never going to be any water there. Well, if you ever go up there and you look down, as my colleague from Tennessee, Dr. Rose said, sometimes he can just imitate like Gomer Pyle or something, you know. But when we got to Golan Heights and he stepped out of the bus, he looked down and he said, golly, he said, you can make a D- in rocket launching 101 and you can hit anybody you want down there and they can't even see you up here. And that's what space is about, you know. And so we need to control space. You know, we went to the moon to collect rock and determine the origins and The Chinese are going there to militarize it. The Russians are going there to militarize it. You know, they don't have the same intentions in their endeavors that we do. They, you know, everything they do has a military component to it. So it's important for our national defense. You know, we've talked about our reliance on 30-some communication satellites. You know, if you shoot a couple of them out of the air, it has big effects. If you shoot a half dozen of them out of the air, or even turn them, you know, I mean, there's major consequences when nobody has phone service. You know, nobody has internet service. You can't use a credit card. It's just can be catastrophic. That it can lead to that. And so we need to protect those. We need to have backups for those. It's just space is going to be, if there is a next major war, it's probably going to be fought over that and in that, and we need to have dominance there.
All right, thank you. I want to step back a second just to the pandemic thing and maybe ask you about liability, business liability in this pandemic, because I know that a lot of small businesses struggle with the information, the direction that's been provided, its recommended actions, etc. But there's a feeling that this could open a whole new wave of liability for the business community in particular as people start to move back out and start returning to normalcy. And what are your thoughts on provision for protection for businesses that follow recommendations, do their best, but it's inevitable that somebody can be contract this or anything for that matter out in public?
Well, the civil and criminal justice systems are largely the responsibility of each state. So the federal government has laws that affect us, but our justice system, except for the federal components, is put in place by our state. So any law that the federal government makes that I would support, would have to have a state opt-out in it, which I could not imagine they would want to opt out, because that is the greatest, can of worms post-recovery that anyone can imagine. Anyone can claim they got sick, burnt, and they got it because they were at the chamber office, they were at your business or whatever, and being able to prove it is cumbersome. I've been sued 3 times in my life, won all 3 of them, obviously. Cost me a lot of money, got awarded damages, but then it costs you a lot of money to collect the damages from the people. I've been threatened with suit a couple other times. And when they said, look, we're going to sue you because of this, and we know it's going to cost you $30,000 or $40,000 to defend it. So how about you just settle us, and for $15,000 we'll call it a day. And my response has been, I'll tell you what the end of the day is. You're going to own everything I have, or you're going to get nothing, because I don't do that. I didn't do anything wrong, and I'm not going to be accosted by you like that. I mean, it's illegal mugging, and I don't play that game. A lot of people succumb to it, and I can see a whole new profit center. I can see, call 1-800 you got COVID even if you didn't, and we'll get you money. And that's not going to be good for society. It's not going to be good for business. It's not going to help the recovery. And Mitch McConnell is pretty dug in that he wants that in future legislation, and Nancy Pelosi is pretty dug in that she doesn't want to do it. So we'll just have to see where it goes from here. But I support it. But again, civil laws mostly are made by our state legislature. And if this has an opt-out provision in it that would offer a 10th Amendment provision, that, the 10th Amendment says, whatever rights are specifically not granted in the Constitution for the federal government are reserved onto the states. So just, in case they want to, but I cannot imagine our state would want to bail out of it, if we would pass something blanket like that for the overall good. So.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks. I appreciate it. I'm getting lots of great comments saying that they so love when you have the opportunity to speak with us. And so I thank you for taking your time today and for joining us yesterday as well. And thank you, as always, for your commitment to us and to the community in general. I'm always inspired when I hear you talk. So I greatly appreciate it, Congressman. And I think we covered all the questions. Somebody else asked about a second round of stimulus checks. I think you covered that you thought that was potentially an option coming in the next round of discussion. And so we'll just wait and see. So thank you again, Congressman, for being here with us. And I was in the middle of talking when it froze, and I was tap dancing, talking about how we're starting a farmers market up here on Friday. So every Friday we're working with Brevard County and the University of Florida Agriculture Extension Office. So come on down to the Welcome Center on Fridays from 3 to 6 p.m. for fresh produce and food. Reminder about our Reboot Titusville initiative, reboottitusville.com initiative. If you've not gotten face masks from us and you would like to, we can do that. Encourage you to take the pledge and check out that website for resources for reopening your business and protecting folks and letting people know that you are doing the very best things recommended for the safety and security of your customers and your employees. So encourage you to take a look at that, participate. And then last but not least, I want to thank AT&T for sponsoring, and I want to thank all of you for being here today. And thank the Congressman again. And when we were out doing that photo shoot on Saturday, that was what I woke up to when we got on the boat and headed out to take pictures. And it was such a beautiful photo. I thought I'd share it. So you guys have a great day and be safe. And we'll see you again very soon. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.